Hi guys. I am on my phone today, so it's like a little bit of a weird angle because for some reason my computer is not working as usual. But okay, so today, welcome to day 4 of our challenge, and today we're going to talk about boundaries. Also, as usual, just let me know when you sign on, if you're here, if you can hear me, see me, those important things. But I feel like there's a lot that could be said about boundaries, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about boundaries tomorrow as well, when we kind of do our wrap up and some of the most important things I think that protect our energy. Boundaries is a really, really important one to me because I think that it's important not only to understand kind of why you're setting boundaries, but it gives you an opportunity to really choose what you're going to spend your energy on, right? So those of us who are particularly sort of sensitive to being energetically drained or just fatigue in general, I think it becomes extra important to really pay attention to how you spend your energy. And we only have so much of it in any given day or week or month. So figuring out how you want to give it away, where you want to spend it, I think is really important. So I think that that's one component of why boundaries are so important. I think they're also important because it really kind of teaches people what your limits are, right? It teaches people what they can ask of you or what your limits are for what you'll do or how you'll be treated. So I think that boundaries are really, really important to have in really every relationship, romantic, professional, friendship, colleagues, whatever, right? Any person that's in your world, I think it's important to have a boundary with, right? How do you expect them to treat you? How do you expect to treat them? What are your expectations for the relationship? What is too much to ask? What is not? What feels out of balance? When will you say no? And I think that, saying no can be hard for many of us. I think especially if we feel sort of guilty or maybe kind of prone to feel like we need to sort of help out everyone in every scenario. But it becomes really empowering to be able to say no to something that you don't want to do or you feel would be really expending your energy in a way that you can't give right now, and just leaving it at that and not needing to explain why you're saying no, not needing to make excuses for the no or saying no because of this or I would love to but this. Like, no you wouldn't, right? Just say no. It's okay. Like, can't do it right now. Or just no, right? That's it. Just leave it at that. You don't need to have a lot of qualifiers or a lot of reasons to explain why. A no can just stand alone. It can just be a no, right? So I think that particularly for those circumstances where we think we don't necessarily have control over a relationship, we often have much more control than we think, or scenario or situation or something, right? So saying no when it's a party that you don't really want to go to, or saying no to doing something extra that you really truly don't have the energy for and feel like it would be draining to you is important. It's part of self-care. It's part of taking care of yourself. It's part of taking care of your health, taking care of your mental well-being, taking care of your energetic resources, right? It's important to figure out what things you want to spend your energy on and what things you don't, so that you can be really clear on that, right? And that you are not confused or having mixed signals around your boundaries, right? And if you set them and that's a no, or that's a, hey, this is unacceptable, depending on what you're setting boundaries around, making sure that you hold the other person accountable for that, right? So that you don't want to set a boundary and then let someone cross it or push it or teach them that your words don't mean anything, right? When you're setting a boundary, it's important to believe what you're saying, to believe that you're saying this for a very important, very clear reason. So if you have that strong footing around it and you know why you're doing it and you know why it's really important to you, I think it's easier to hold the limit, to hold the boundary, right? In my head, sometimes when I think about boundaries, I'm like sort of like this, right? Like that's the kind of visual that comes to mind a bit, or the kind of feeling sensation of it. But being able to hold people accountable to that, to say, no, I told you this was not a thing I was going to do, or I told you it's unacceptable when you do this thing, right? But holding people accountable to the boundary is important. And then if the person refuses to really accept that boundary, or they're not following it, or they're not listening to it, it's up to you then to figure out what you want to do with the circumstance or with this person in your world, right? We often have a lot more choice than we think around how much time someone takes up in our life, about how much space they take up in our head, in our world, in our lives, right? So I would give that some thought and figure out what limits are really important to you. In what ways right now are your boundaries being pushed? Are there ways that other people know that they can push your boundaries? Are there people who you know ask a lot of you and you feel like, man, they should really know that they've asked me for something this week and last week and 2 weeks ago and 5 weeks ago, and right? So thinking about who is already pushing your boundaries, or who is more likely to push your boundaries, and what makes it difficult for you to speak up for that, right? Or to speak up for yourself and to comment on why that's not okay for you, or what the issue is for you, right? So being aware of kind of when your boundaries are being pushed, why you want to set them, and really being able to understand and sort of feel into what it would feel like if you weren't giving away more energy than receiving in this particular situation, right? Or what is your kind of line in the sand for a particular issue or person or situation, right? So really understanding that, I think, is important. So I want there to be a little bit of a dialogue around this, right? What are some scenarios that you guys have a hard time setting boundaries with? People, situations, it could be a whole range of things. And then, what is it that makes it difficult about that? And like, what are the areas that you feel like you could shift? What are some areas in your life where you feel like you can set more clear boundaries? And really be able to, kind of define more where you want to spend your energy and where you don't, and what you feel is acceptable and what isn't. Because I really do believe, I'm a very firm believer in the idea of that, like we teach people how we want to be treated, and we teach people what's acceptable unconsciously, right? Just even without intention, just how we react to them, what we let them do to us, or how we let them treat us or talk to us, or what they do. We're training. We're in sort of a training process with that other person, right? With anyone in your world. So you're kind of teaching them what your boundaries are, or what they're not, right? With every interaction, with every encounter. So taking ownership of that is important, because I think it helps us not feel like we're at the mercy of other people, or at the mercy of what happens, and we're just sort of on this roller coaster that we have no control over, right? But shifting that to feel empowered and to feel ownership around setting your limits and understanding the role that you play in teaching other people how to treat you, how to interact with you. So I think it's a really great thing to appreciate, right? It gives you some ownership back. And take an honest look at how you're doing this now, right? Are there people or circumstances or situation in your life where you're like, wow, that feels really energetically out of balance. I feel like this person is really, really pushing my boundaries. What am I doing that's allowing this? Or what am I not doing that's allowing this? And how can I handle this differently? And what would that feel like if I did? So I think that will be really, really important for today's work, for the challenge. So think about that. I don't want to introduce too many different topics, but I really want you guys to think about the boundary setting piece and all of those other components that go with it. And then we'll talk a little bit more about boundaries tomorrow. But feel free to comment and answer some of those questions after you guys watch this video. Okay, so have a great night, and I will talk to you tomorrow.